Last time, on a trip north to the slopes of Mount Hermon, Jesus discussed with his disciples who people were saying he was. Then he asked them who they believed him to be. Peter responded by declaring that Jesus was the Messiah. But when Jesus revealed that his future held suffering and death, Peter protested. And Jesus firmly rebuked him, saying that Satan was behind that kind of human perspective. Later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a mountaintop where, for a brief moment, they were allowed to glimpse the glory of his deity that was normally hidden by his humanity. As the narrative unfolds, Jesus continues to challenge people's view of him and help them to understand his role. To do this, he uses a number of metaphors taken from everyday life, familiar, concrete things that help his audience understand the abstract truth that he's communicating. John records some of these. In the first, John chapter 10, verses 7 to 11, Jesus likens himself to the gate of a sheepfold. To the people listening that day, everything to do with raising and looking after sheep is commonplace. Each morning for part of the year, a familiar sight is the local shepherds leading their flocks out to wherever grass and edible shrubs can be found for grazing. In the evenings, you can see and hear them bringing the sheep back to the enclosures on the outskirts of the towns and villages. In the hot summers, they probably wouldn't be around as much. They'd have led the sheep up into the cooler hills. Again, in cold winters, you won't see them around because they've taken their flocks for warmth and shelter down to lower valleys. But even out in the wilderness, they have enclosures with walls made out of rocks and whatever else comes to hand, perhaps thorn bushes. And some of these are built against a cliff face, particularly if there's a handy cave in the cliff. To let the sheep wander at night is a sure way to lose many to thieves and to wild animals. In fact, a conscientious shepherd knows that he can't just get the sheep into the sheepfold and then disappear into his tent or cave and assume everything's fine for the night. What he does is get them in and then lie down in the gap, the entrance, to be, as it were, the gate himself. Then even if he does go to sleep, it's like half of him is awake, so that at the slightest disturbance, he's ready to keep any wandering sheep in or to keep anyone else out. So the audience immediately has this very familiar picture in mind when Jesus starts talking about shepherds and gates. Yes, certainly everyone has seen what he's describing on their way out in the mornings or back at night. The flocks often mingle, but it all gets sorted gradually as the different sheep recognize their own shepherd's voice, calling out to them and eventually gather around him. And it's true that only the true shepherd of a flock goes through the gate. Anyone sneaking over the wall must be up to no good. But clearly Jesus is using it as an illustration of something. What's his point? Teacher, what are you trying to tell us? We don't understand. But as he continues and expands the illustration, his meaning starts to emerge. He's saying that we, all people, are like sheep. In other words, rather foolish creatures prone to aimless wandering, badly in need of rescuing and care and protection. In this picture, he is the gate for the sheep, the entrance into peace and safety with God, protection from his enemy, and purpose in this life and beyond. This is in John chapter 10, verses 9 and 10. He says, "Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life." The sheep that are drawn to his voice come to him and to him alone because they realize that his offer is completely genuine. All other claims are false. They are made by impostors, Satan, his spirit helpers, and often unknowing human collaborators who care nothing for the sheep. They want to steal and kill, to entirely destroy all life and hope. In contrast, Jesus cares deeply for the sheep. He wants to lead them to where life can be rich and satisfying, now and forever. In fact, as a shepherd, he loves the sheep so much, he's willing to give his life for them. Were the listeners that day reminded of the prophet Isaiah's words written centuries before, but clearly pointing toward the man now speaking to them, when he said, "He was pierced for our rebellion, crushed for our sins. He was beaten so we could be whole. He was whipped so we could be healed. All of us, like sheep, have strayed away. We have left God's paths to follow our own." A little later in his record, this is John chapter 14, verse 6, John recalls Jesus making another statement about who he is. It says, Jesus told him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me." His claims here are so definitive, so exclusive, that anyone who actually engages with them has to accept them as truth or to dismiss them as the pathologically conceited ramblings of a madman. Again, he leaves no middle ground, no neutral position regarding who he is. Speaking to his disciples one day, and specifically addressing Thomas, the proverbial skeptic among them, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to the Father except through me." So first of all, Jesus is saying that he, and he alone, is the way that anyone can relate to God. All other attempts, whether under the banner of Christianity or some other organized religious system or a vaguely spiritual idolatry, they're all dead ends if they don't lead to God, even if those activities make people feel temporarily peaceful and comforted and uplifted, in tune with God or whatever. Jesus categorically states that unless it is through him, it is definitely not God they're relating to. Secondly, he says that he is the truth. It's important to note that this, like the other claims Jesus makes, are not just, to use philosophical terms, epistemological. In other words, about how things are known. Rather, he is making ontological statements. In other words, what things are in their very essence, their existence. In other words, who he actually is. So while it's perfectly true that he teaches truth and through him truth can be known, even more fundamentally, he is saying that he is the truth. Truth has no external existence apart from him. Nothing can accurately reflect reality if it doesn't accurately reflect who he is. Any worldview or ideology, belief, thought pattern, opinion, or statement that is not aligned with the truth that he is by definition false. But this is not just a theoretical statement, and truth is not just some cold, detached, propositional doctrine or dogma. Because he is the good shepherd, because as well as being truth, he is also love and grace, he shares himself, the truth, gladly and willingly with those who come humbly to listen and learn. He takes on himself the burden of reaching out to us and patiently leading us in the journey of truly knowing him and the Father. Because, as his third statement makes clear, as well as being the way and the truth, he is also life. Again, this is an ontological statement. The concept of life is meaningless without him. All existence that is not part of him, part of his life, no matter how great it might look, is a fake, as Adam and Eve began to find out in that bitter day in the garden. For one thing, life apart from him is just a brief pathway that's leading to physical and then spiritual death, eternal punishment and separation from him. But his statement about being life goes infinitely further than just offering a way to escape the horror of death. It also includes the incredible, mind-blowing possibility of living now and eternally without ever being separated from him, of walking through life beside him, while he progressively opens up to us all that God intends for his image bearers to experience in this gift called life. It does not mean any kind of escape from the bumps and problems and real pain of life on earth. But it does mean that those who come to him for life, who accept him as life, have the opportunity to experience a purpose and hope that is absolutely real and limitless, because he is.